Facilities, Beaufort County, Tuesday, January the 18th. If you would, rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Sarah, I assume we've complied with FOIA?
Yes, sir, we have.
And we need to approve the agenda. Is there a motion for that, please?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, York. Second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Alice. Any objections? Stands approved without objection. We need to approve the minutes from November the 15th. That's 2 months ago.
Make that motion.
Thank you. Mark makes the motion, second from York. Any objections? Okay, it stands approved without objection. We're now at citizen comment, and I'd like to welcome Arnold Brown, who wants to speak to us on item number 14. Come forward, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to have a few minutes to comment on this particular item. I know a lot of work went into this to put in the minutes and the comments by the citizens from the St. Helena Island area. So the person that works for the county that captured all that information and then send letters back to everyone addressing each and every question, personally.
We lost video. We can't hear him.
Okay. And
Yeah, I can't hear either.
Sarah, we've lost audio.
testing,
hang on
1,
just
2,
a second.
3, testing.
Can you hear me speaking?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, so
Now we
maybe it's
can.
be at the speaker. Okay, speak once more and see if they got it.
Testing, 1, 2.
I can hear him.
Okay.
Okay.
Just based on what I've heard in the last meeting, the numbers are very, very important. And in my background, my degree's in business, and numbers are very important. Dates are very important. Holidays, birthdays, anniversaries. If we miss those dates with our spouses, we can be in trouble. I'm sure that everyone has read pages 43 to 47 that has the comments from the citizen. And what I found there are some misunderstandings, or there are some mistakes, and there are some bad numbers in there. And if the data is bad, that's presented to the council, then there's a ripple effect, of course, to make bad decisions. Members or citizens will lose confidence in the city council, and then there's a degree of mistrust. My family has owned property on St. Helena Island on Martin Luther King for over 80 years. So this is dear to my heart. And we could talk more about that. But on page number 40, for example, the narratives read, based on 67 comments received, it is recommended 5 feet of sidewalk, 5 feet of green space, and 10 feet over the bridge. Well, in the discussions, when you go through the minutes by the citizens, that item of 5 feet of green space, that was never brought up in the meeting. It was not agreed upon. It wasn't recommended or anything. So we're asking that 5 space of green space be eliminated in your recommendations. On page number 41, the second paragraph, it says the pathway is approximately 2 miles. And that's one of the things, the first thing that caught my attention. From Highway 21 to Francis to the Library Road is not 2 miles. It's 1.1 miles. So having information like this, and like I said, my background is in purchasing, if that falls into an RFQ, now you're going to pay more for the project than, to a contractor because of that. Page number 41 again, advertisement press releases were sent 7 days prior to November 4th. I've advertised, I have a real estate license part-time. You can't get anything in the paper in 7 days, okay? Next item, emails approximately 9 mails in advance, reminders of newsletters 2 mail in advance, 75 flyers. I haven't found anyone that received a copy of the flyers, at the 75 flyers that went out between Highway 21 on the east side of the road to the Library Road. There are approximately 9 residential families. That's all, just 9. Not counting the church and not counting Penn Center. And from half the people I talked to that I was able to get a hold to, none of them received a flyer. Matter of fact, the information I brought to them made them aware of the meeting at the library on November 4th. Now, the yard sign, and what caught my attention is the yard sign. The emails, these emails that went out, only 20% of emails are ever read, okay? 90% of text messages are read, so emails is not a good way to advertise. So,
Okay.
other important information.
Kind of out of time, but just as some background, we don't respond, we just receive them, so I don't want you to think there's a lack of interest because we don't respond in this particular meeting.
Yeah.
But the staff will be in touch with you
Okay.
to talk through these issues, and we actually very much appreciate when citizens come forward and share concerns that they have, because we all want to get it right.
Okay.
And so, I thank you very much.
Can I make one other
Sure.
question? What happens from here? This is all new to me. I've never been in this chamber before. I may not even.
Well, I'll leave it
but-
to the staff probably to be in contact with you,
Okay.
and then kind of see what happens, and certainly if you're not satisfied, come back.
Okay, but I asked that this not be approved with that 5 feet of green space.
Yeah,
That-
Jared,
That's what I asked.
Mr. Chairman, Jared will speak more to that when he
Sure.
gets to that item.
Yeah, we'll speak to it when we get to that item, and I think it's mostly an update, not a vote, if I remember correctly. But thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Is Sarah, anybody else that wishes to speak? Okay, we have
Sir.
nobody else. Jared, I think it's your turn.
Thank you, Chairman Ryman. Appreciate the Finance Committee going long, because usually we're the long ones, so hopefully we have opportunity to be shorter than Finance Committee.
As long as you're a minute shorter, we're good.
There we go. So just want to give you an update on things that are going on inside the engineering division. Oftentimes, the things that we bring to committee and thus council are things for action, but we have a lot going on, as you guys are well aware, that don't necessarily make it to the committee meeting. So just want to focus a little bit of time on that and talk through the different departments that make up the engineering division. So first off, in transportation, forgive me if I've said this before, I like roads, so I sometimes repeat myself, but each year we program $2.5 million of a CTC funds towards paving county roads. We just completed last year, year 4, 12.7 miles. And over the past 4 years, we've improved over 46 miles of our roads, which is approximately 22% of our 208 miles of county roads. So we're continuing to make good progress. We have a good system in place, and we're continuing to go down our 5-year plan. We're actually on our 5-year. We've just received bids back of year 5 of that 5-year resurfacing plan, as well as our pavement preservation rejuvenator bid. We are also currently working on our next 5-year plan. So we're at the end of a 5-year plan. This will be the second reiteration of that plan. And so we're excited to see the successes that will be evident based off the 5 years of improvements that we've been working under. On the same side with dirt roads, we have a 5-year plan. We're currently working on year 2, and out to bid, we have year 3 going out in February. So one note I'd like to make mention of year 3, this is just the epitome of staff working and local government at work. But on year 3, we had a road called Rainbow Road, and Councilman Cunningham's not here this afternoon with us, but he was part of this. We had a project. We started an early development of this project and ran into some issues with the right-of-way. So we had a public meeting with the neighborhood out there, and Councilman Cunningham came with us to that and talked through with the public and said, hey, this is the issue that we have. This is really something we need to put back in the community's hands. Once you guys take care of it and bring the right-of-way concerns back to us, we'll add it back to our list. So that was well received by the community, and they understood our conditions that we had to work through on our end, and we were able to work through that. They immediately started to work on their end and have gotten back to us. So we are moving forward with that project in our year 3 resurfacing bid. In the hopeful that they'll have their end finished by the time we get our bids back. So what we thought was something we're going to have to scrap from this year and move it back to a following year. Us working with the local community, hopefully it's all going to come together where we can continue to keep that road in the year 3 resurfacing program, our dirt road program. Facilities management, just a few updates on some of the admin building updates that you probably hear, and Eric's probably pleased to hear this, but our HVAC, so let me back up, facilities management, there's 2 parts of a building that really make the maintenance and management something to protect, and that is the roof and the building envelope, so if we keep it dry, and then if we keep it air conditioned, so that we have proper flow. Those are the 2 main things of facilities management. So we'll be addressing both of those items on this building. This building's 31 years old. We have an HVAC bid that's come back in February with a hopeful bring that to committee and council in March. And then we're nearing final design on our roof design. So we've got some roof issues that we've known for a long time, and we're working through those with a design engineer and hopeful to put those out to bid in February such that we can come back to award with that solicitation in the April timeframe. On capital projects, we've been working on pools very hard over the last year, calendar year. We recently completed the resurfacing on the Battery Creek pool. This is the 3rd pool that we've resurfaced over the calendar year, so we're real excited about that. We're currently under contract with the consultant to prepare an action plan for the interior building renovations for all 3 pool facilities. We expect to have the alternatives analysis report in hand by the end of May. Solid waste and recycling. We continue to have good benefits from our decal implementation. We actually had a secondary benefit revealed to us here recently. We had a meeting with our private haulers, as we do yearly. And one thing that we observed and they noticed and made mention to us is that as we've seen a reduction in our volumes, they've actually seen an uptick in their revenues. So what that leads us to believe is that as intended, the decals are to remove those folks that are illegally using our convenience centers. So just residential is what it's geared towards. So there was others in there, and appropriately so, the private haulers are seeing those people, instead of dumping in our centers, are now adding service with the private vendors. So good news on that. Another good news in solid waste, and again, I just wanted to highlight another local government at work. We had a case, we continue to get decals requests here and there. One came in for a parcel on Hilton Head. It was a 3 or 4 home part, or 3 or 4 mobile homes on one part. It was referenced and categorized as commercial residential. So as you guys are aware, decals are for residential only, not commercial. So initially it was not approved, but said you can make an appeal process with our assessors. So they reached out to the assessors, and Councilman McKellen was involved in this process, reached out to Ebony and our assessors department, and they went out and inspected and took a look and talked with the homeowners, and indeed it was being used as residential. They were 3-family homes on the property, as well as a structure out back that was a residential structure, not a commercial structure. So they were indeed successful in their appeal and reclassified to residential commercial, thus allowed us to give them the decal as intended in our program. So again, just wanted to tell you some of the goodwill stories that happen in your local government at work. Public Works Department, Councilman Glover, you had mentioned in the Finance Department what the current rate is as far as employees. We are down approximately 25% of staff in Public Works, and that's all inclusive, roads and bridges and stormwater all collectively. So we're actively recruiting and trying to get those positions filled as well. So, but we're manning up and working through that situation as diligently as possible. As mentioned before, we're working on accreditation, APWA, American Public Works Association. We're approximately 75% through with that process, and there will be an on-site audit committee that will come and inspect our progress in May. We're still aiming for a successful accreditation prior to the national convention this summer, which is in Charlotte in the June or July timeframe. The airports, not going to talk about Hilton Head Airport. We talk about that plenty enough, but to talk about Beaufort Executive Airport, we are aggressively exploring options to construct hangars, both T hangars and box hangars. Currently, as planes come in, a lot of smaller planes dock and spend the night on our tarmac, our apron out front. But there is a list of about 50, a little bit over 50 individuals who had made interest that they would be interested in parking in an overnight structure in a T hangar. We recently did a sewer connection project, so the terminal was actually on sewer, on gravity sewer, or excuse me, septic tank, and we've connected to Beaufort Jasper's gravity sewer in the area. And so now we have available space, additional space for T hangar construction, and we're going to be looking at that aggressively over the coming year. As well as on the southern side of the terminal, box executive hangars for private jets and such, a similar manner. So we're also in the final stages of a moderate renovation project, not the same renovation that we have at Hilton Head that's planned, but a smaller renovation to provide better spaces for our visitors, our pilots, and those that use the airport. And lastly, just 2 updates on a couple of positions and recent hires. So we were recently hired our fleet manager position. This became open and available in the fall of last year. We had a gentleman by the name of Todd Davis that he started with us in January 10th. He is a retired Marine and has a background in fleet motor pool management. So couldn't ask for a better fit in that position, and we think he'll do a great job for us. Also, starting in February on the 7th is our ARPA project coordinator. So this will be filled by Mr. Hank Amundsen. He is currently servicing as assistant city manager of the city of Walterboro. So good news for Beaufort, bad news for me where I live in our county. We're stealing all the talent pool from Colleton County, but hey, to benefit where we were working here in Beaufort County. So that's all that I have, Chairman Rodman, but would gladly take any questions.
Any questions from council members?
Quickly, aggressive, the executive airport, how do you define aggressively?
Well, I try to beat down finance and try to find money every day of the week. So we're aggressively, we're trying to develop projects right away. The T hangar projects are a little bit easier to construct and the cost isn't as high as the executive hangars. So we're trying to find a funding source, and if so, potentially even a funding source where it pays for itself. That's where we want to be. I think there's a case for that, so we're working on that pro forma so we can petition that.
I would think that it's an investment, and it will basically pay for itself.
It is. We're gathering the data. We've got user data over the past several years, and even some more specific data. So we're pulling that and putting some financial numbers to it to make sure that we can justify the spend. And then we'll be bringing that to finance and administration and hopefully the committee and council.
Is there sufficient land out there?
Sir?
Sufficient land?
There is for the T hangars. There's not a lot of land out there, but there's enough for expansion of the T hangars kind of to the north of the terminal, and then some executive hangars, box hangars to the south of the terminal. Now, we're not going to have the same number of hangars that we have at Hilton Head.
No.
But for the airport and its size, there's additional space out there.
Okay, thank you.
I can't see who's on the screen, so speak up if I don't see you. Jared, thank you very much. Good updates as always. Is John still going to join us for an update on the airports?
No, that's something I apologize.
Okay.
That
We'll do that another day?
A change on that, so we do not have John teed up for that. So
Okay.
that would be something to strike.
Well, we always enjoy having John. He always does a good job, but we'll just look forward to having him at an appropriate time. Okay, that takes us to the agenda. First item is number 9. There's a tennis court renovations.
Sure thing. So this is something we put out to bid in October of last year. This is the tennis courts right on Boundary Street. We had 2 bids that were received in November. The lowest bid was McGrath Industries. That gave us a bid of $683,800. So with a 10% contingency, that brings the total to $752,180. The engineer's estimate was $750,000, so it's right there in line with the engineer's estimate. This would be funded by 3 funding sources: hospitality tax, proceeds from the sale of the Bob Jones Field, as well as a PARD grant. So the staff recommendation would be to award the contract to McGrath Industries for the bid in the amount of $752,180.
Question, since you mentioned hospitality taxes, do we have to go through 3 readings on this?
No, this was a previously
Approved? Okay,
approved,
good.
yes, sir.
Good. Looking for a motion?
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Alice, York seconds. Discussion? Objections? Seeing none, that stands approved. Does that mean you disagree, Eric?
Trying to get a microphone.
Okay.
I do want the council to realize that once they approve this at council and work starts out there, some of the Beaufort County, Beaufort City area council members are likely to receive a lot of phone calls because we will have to shut the tennis courts down in order to do this work. And there will be no play there. And I do expect, and I'm just preparing you all for some phone calls whenever that does occur, and some possible emails about these courts being closed off for public use.
So should we just refer all those to the
You
county
can refer them to the
administrator?
county administrator if you'd like to. That would be great. Thank you.
Is it a long construction?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It shouldn't take that long.
I wouldn't think so. Thank you much. Okay, next item is accepting of a grant award for litter.
Yep. So this is always fun to accept money. I went to Beaufort or Bluffton Town Council, and they had guys bring them big giant checks. So I don't know how they get that, but we'll accept the money that we have at hand. So this is a Palmetto Bride Litter Crew Grant Award. So we submitted this last November. And the grants for eligible, this is for litter removal in areas that are unsafe for volunteers or to supplement existing programs. So we couldn't ask for a more inline grant request. I mean, this is exactly what we have. We have a robust volunteer program to keep our Beaufort beautiful. And so this, as you guys are probably aware, along our medians, or maybe you're not aware, the volunteers are only allowed to pick up trash on the shoulders of the road. If it's a divided median, say SC 170 or US 21, DOT does not allow those volunteers in the middle, nor probably should they be in the middle. Just crossing traffic's dangerous. So this is a grant award that would allow us to go out to bid to have some on-call services, contract services to help us with that effort. And again, in the nature of the grant, this would be to supplement what's going on with our volunteers, but just in those unsafe areas where contractors and professionals typically work in those median areas. So the staff recommendation would be to approve and accept the 2022 Palmetto Grant Litter Crew Grant Award.
Motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Gerald.
I'll second it.
Second, Mark. I assume there's no objections to accepting money. It stands approved without objection. Let's take 11, 12, and 13 together. These are 3 resolutions relating to right-of-ways. You want to give us a brief
absolutely.
update on those?
Yep, so as talked about earlier, we have a dirt road resurfacing program. And this is would be projects that are all lined on Defusky Island for year 4. However, we had coordinated previously with Defusky Island that it would not be paving, but at their request that these roads would be rock. But same thing, similar manner, in order to expend public funds, we've got to perfect our right-of-way. So this was still the nature of that project. So there's 3 roads here that would be included. That would be School Road. The next 3 roads, hold on. Church Road and Francis Jones Road. So all 3 are the same, similar nature, different lengths and different right-of-ways. But basically, this is a resolution allowing us to perfect this right away such that we can later expend the public funds for the rocking project planned for year 4.
All three are on DeFusky?
They are, yes, sir.
Okay.
So moved,
I'll make,
Mr. Chairman.
yep, I'll second it then.
So we have York and Mark, and for these three, which seem pretty straightforward, any objections? Seeing none, those three stand approved. These will go on to council. I don't know if you can put them all into one item, but either one or three is fine. The next item comes back to the pathway project that Mr. Brown spoke to.
Sure, and I'll invite Brittany Fields out of our office. She's been running point on these pathways and been doing a great and fabulous job working with our consultant, Jennifer Bragg. But on this one, just to reiterate what's our next step, typically what we've been doing, we've been holding 2 public hearings per resolution that council set forth previously to make sure at the beginning of the project, hey, this is the concept that we're going with, and then as the projects are developed, and we have initial comments from public agencies, hey, this is where we are public, are there any modifications we need to make along the way? What we also have been doing is briefing committee on this in an information-only manner. There's really no vote that we've been taking unless there is a need for some specific vote or action. But in the past, there hasn't been. So I'll give Brittany Fields the floor so she can explain the process that we've done and let you guys know where we are on this project.
Welcome, Brittany.
Thank you, Jared. Good afternoon, committee. So as Jared stated, we have resolution 2019-44 that requires us to have at least 2 public meetings per project associated with the referendum. In October 19th through November 20th of 2020, we held a first virtual public meeting for all of the approved priority pathways. The second meeting for Dr. Martin Luther King was hybrid from October 22nd through November 19th. We did a virtual public meeting, and then we did an in-person meeting on November 24th to provide the community the information. During the public comment period, we received a total of 67 comments. Many of the comments were against the 8-foot pathway that was originally proposed, and therefore we have brought forth the recommendation to bring that down to a 5-foot sidewalk. In accordance to the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, that does also require a 5-foot grass buffer from edge of pavement of the travel lane of the roadway. So that is what we have recommended to move forward with. Survey is actually going to go ahead and start this week, and design is going to take about 3 months. We'll get to 75% right-of-way plans, and we'll be bringing that forward to the community again.
So the second community one would be a couple months from now?
It'll be the third meeting.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay. Comments from council?
Just want to make one comment about the 5 feet that Mr. Brown raised. I think when you made your presentation, you were very inclusive of 13 feet altogether, which include 5 feet for the grass and then 8 feet for the pathway.
Correct.
The community basically said no to the 8 feet, but the 5 feet grass was already included in that presentation. So you'd be looking at 10 feet altogether versus 13 because of the recommendation that's coming from the community. That's my understanding of.
Yes, both in the, we had 2 display boards that was up, along with the handouts that we passed out. All that information was located on it. Buffers are required for pedestrian accommodations along travel lanes.
Doing great. I'm gonna say one thing because of the planner MA is coming up.
You all should think long and hard about getting rid of a landscape verge with a pathway. The purpose of the pathway is to make sure everyone feels comfortable to use that from a pleasure and a need standpoint. And if you do away with the 5-foot verge, that's the planner term for that planted strip of open space. Between that and the travelway, you're putting the pathway closer to the travelway. People aren't going to feel comfortable being out there with kids on bicycles and things like that because they don't feel like they have a safe
zone to protect their children from the roadway and traffic and things like that. So
Sure,
I would
yeah.
recommend that we not depart from any type of 5-foot open. All of this is going to occur, as I understand it, by and large in the existing right-of-way. So it's not like we're taking anyone's property in order to do
No, I wasn't saying that. I was basically.
No, I know you weren't, right. I just want to
okay.
make it clear for the public record, so.
Yeah, there's currently 33 foot of SCDOT right-of-way, and it is our intentions to stay within that right-of-way. We
Right.
understand the great oaks and trees that are out there. We're going to continue to have a minimal impact to the environment. And then along the causeway that goes over the creek, we're proposing a 10-foot boardwalk, and that's going to allow people to enjoy the boardwalk. As you've mentioned before, possibly going out there and fishing and still having people being able to pass each other along that waterway.
One of the things that came out of this particularly public meeting, they talked a lot about the sea level rise. And I think part of when you do your due diligence with the engineering study, you will probably find out that there may need to be a pathway that's above the highway right now because of that, with the anticipation that hopefully the state will come on board and do something with MLK, particularly in that area where the bridges lies right now. So that was something good, and I think we'll probably see a recommendation to have that pathway raised in that area.
Yeah, we'll look at that as a part of our design. The drainage along the area and the stormwater, which we all have requirements for, and then we can coordinate with SCDOT to see if they have any future planned improvements for MLK. We can do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so the recommendation is 10 feet, 5 of vegetation and 5 of, that's what you're designing to. And I think Mr. Brown is saying that some of the people in the community disagree with that. You want to speak once more, Mr. Brown?
Yes,
Sure.
sir.
Come on up.
I have a copy of the design.
Okay.
And this was discussed at the meeting. And I think even after the representatives from the county came, we had a meeting afterwards. And it was, we emphasized 5 feet. And even in the comments section, it's saying from the 13 feet down to 5 feet. The residents, we want to maintain, and we understand this is in the easement, but we want to maintain that. And there are several areas, just driving here from Hilton Head, the Walmart, there is no green space. Lowe's, no green space. Harbor Freight, no green space. Chevrolet Buick, no green space. Buffalo Wild Wings, University of South Carolina on Carteret Street, no green. There's a little area there that has 17 inches of green space. The sidewalk is 54 inches. So this green space it's not necessary.
Yeah.
And we emphasize that. It's not necessary. It has to be maintained. But the green space is not, and we can't speak who's going to feel comfortable. But there's all over the city, there's no green space. There's 5 feet or less of sidewalks. So
I think as we move forward, I think there can be some continuing dialogue between the community and council, and Mr. Glover, of course, represents that area. So let's all keep an eye on it. If there's a disagreement, let's bring it back sooner rather than later. But just so we don't go all the way through the RFP process. But I know staff will do that. I don't need to say that. So, okay, let's move along. Next item is an ordinance. It has to do with some government-owned property relative to restricted areas. Welcome, sir.
How are you?
You don't get to address us too often. We're glad to have you.
I try to stay out of your way.
We won't.
I didn't do too good today, so I'm here.
There you go.
Actually, I was asked by our assistant county attorney, Tom, to come up and get this started. This is really, probably a lot of the questions can be answered by legal, but I'm just going to get started on the amendment to this. We've started looking at an issue that we were dealing with outside on our county property. And we've been dealing with it for quite some time, since August, to be frank. And I would like to, first, before I get too far, is to commend our county administrator for, I think, being very, very tolerable, that I don't think a lot of other people would have been tolerable of the situation that was taking place outside, and trying to find other means necessary to help somebody. But as we looked and tried to decide what options we had, one of those options that we looked at was whether or not our ordinances addressed anything like this. And of course, our attorneys were astute enough to bring up the fact that they didn't, and that they needed to address them and add in another section into the ordinance which talks about camping and making fires and cooking food and probably fishing in our stormwater pond and eating the fish out of there. But so what you see before you is an addition to our government-owned properties and facilities ordinance that talks about restricted access to certain areas. We've added a section in there, 2-675, which talks about camping on county property. And so that's what the premise of changing this is. I just want to make sure that we do understand that I think this is one of those things that we look at as a last resort, whether or not there's other actions that can be taken, frankly. And I think, frankly, we did look for every other option, but I think at the end of the day, you need to know that if all other options are done, you need to have the last option available to you, and we didn't. So we need to tighten up our ordinance, and I think this is one of the ways that we could tighten our ordinance up for our county properties and facilities. Not just this campus, but all the county properties within Beaufort County.
You anticipate any pushback from any groups, or and is this something that happens in other counties?
I haven't seen any, or I haven't received any phone calls. Frankly, I've got involved only because under my category of public safety director, it kind of fell in that realm. And unfortunately, I do get to deal with a lot of the situations that go on because of the detention center, dealing with people coming in and out of the detention center. And that's where I got brought into this to help try to solve the problem. And it's taken us a long time to help solve that problem. But that's part of the premise is why we're here.
Okay. And does the sheriff have any problem with this, or is this something to be coordinated?
We've that this is a culmination of a cooperative effort between Mr. Kevaney and Mr. Gurley, the attorney for the sheriff's office, and administration and the sheriff. We've worked together to develop this amendment. The sheriff said once it's adopted, if it is adopted, that he'll happily enforce it on our behalf. Again, the purpose of this amendment is not for us to penalize people. I've seen some Facebook comments about a few things that people have sent me about people questioning the need for this ordinance. Again, it's not designed to be punitive to people, but we cannot have people, because of the public health issues, camping on our property because there are no public facilities outside, and things are happening on our property here that could be a public safety issue if we allow it to continue or happen again. So we're trying to do this to give the sheriff the necessary tools for him to be able to assist us in enforcing that type of activity on our properties.
Looking for a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Mark makes the motion. Looking for a second?
I'll second,
Alan
Mr. Chairman.
seconds. Okay, discussion?
I do,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman. I understand exactly the purpose of the motion. There's no question about that. One of the things that I have a heart for is really the homeless. And the question becomes, what happens to the homeless? Where do they go? I remember several years ago, the city of Charleston was trying to address homeless in their park, public park. We talked about the mental health that came under you as well. Homeless is okay under you as well. I don't know the answer for either one, homeless or the mental health.
Or the combination of both.
Of the combination of both. Where do they go? And I've been told that Beaufort County has a history of just pushing people away from this county. I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of a solution trying to address the homeless. And I don't know the answer to it. So I'm going to.
I wish I had an answer, and let me answer it this
yeah,
way.
you're doing the best you can. I'm not arguing with your position. I understand.
Right.
I just don't want to be on this. I'm not too sure where I am right now on this, because I really want to do something tangible that we can demonstrate that we are really trying to address the problem of homeless or the mental health.
And I can answer, and if I can put your mind at ease, and I'll try to answer it this way. I think that we are trying to. I think we are trying to address it. As a matter of fact, 2 council members are going to have a meeting. Logan Cunningham and Councilman McKellen both are going to have meetings to try to address this problem as a whole. Mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and homeless issues, because they all kind of go hand in hand. A lot of agencies around here deal with different segments, but not so much as a holistic approach. And I wish I did have the answers for you, because running the detention center, we run into this problem lots of times where we do see people that are coming in that are homeless and being charged with crimes, and then they get out, and then where do they go? I don't know. I can't answer that question for you. I do know that there's a lot of groups out there that want to help. I think that through our dialogue and our meetings that we're fixing to have with both council members, because I think what their ideas are to bring a lot of the different agencies that may be dealing in a silo effect, bringing them all to the table and having a larger conversation about how do we fix this problem in our community, and not push people off to other places like Savannah or up to Columbia or somewhere else. I think that's where we start at, and we got to have that conversation with our leaders here to try to solve that problem, because it's a problem of our own community, and we shouldn't be pushing our problems off onto other places or just try to get rid of those problems. We need to help those people, and we need to help those problems. And I think we're going to do that. I feel kind of optimistic that these are conversations that should have been had a long time ago, but we're going to have them, and they're going to be some difficult questions to answer and listen to, but I think it's time to do that. And I think that they're willing to step up and listen and bring everybody to the table, and then bring those to our state legislators. Because frankly, I don't think anything's going to get done unless the legislators get involved and change some state laws and some other things that may go along with it.
I understand exactly what you just said. My question I would have is that a 2-member committee that's commissioned by this council? Is that just 2 members on this council who wants to have a dialogue on this issue? To me, if you had a council-appointed committee to address this problem, it gives it more validity and strength.
Well, I think,
go ahead,
I have an opinion about that, Councilman Glover. I think as chairman and vice chairman of community services, of course, I think we all want to be involved and be part, but I think they need to and they want to take the leadership role under Community Services Committee, because all of our local agencies that have to deal with these problems, the revolving door of the mental health and drug addiction and other things that cause someone to go to the hospital, to go to the detention center, go back on the street, fall under community services. So I don't know that this is just a suggestion. I mean, that there's already a committee there. And I think that's, Mr. Foote, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's why the two of them have come forward as chairman and vice chairman of that committee.
Yes, ma'am.
If I appreciate that, Ms. Howell, because that was not my understanding when you made that comment. So I apologize if I made any offended anybody, but that was not clear. So I'm glad Ms. Howell has brought that forward. So thank you. I look forward for the committee addressing that issue.
Other comments?
Councilman Glover.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, we're going to have that first meeting under the auspices of the Community Services. And you are on that Community Services Committee. So by extension, I would expect that you would be invited to attend. Colonel Foote, you have the Zoom meeting information available to provide to all of the members of Community Services who have an interest in attending?
I can, sir.
And anybody else who would like to come. I mean, Colonel, do you have an idea off the top of your
We have to be
head
careful.
who will be attending that? Who will be attending that tomorrow?
Well, I've been told that, first of all, the meeting tomorrow was going to be just a basic meeting to try to figure out who we wanted to invite to our next future meetings, because we have to be careful about having any kind of quorums or anything.
Okay.
I appreciate the invitation. I have something else I have to do tomorrow, but I'll be looking forward to further meetings.
Yes,
Thanks.
sir.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments? So the motion on the floor is to move this ordinance forward to council.
Yes, sir.
We'll have plenty of time to debate it, and perhaps some of the things that are coming out of the committees may emerge at that point in time. Any other comments? Any objections to this? Seeing none, this stands approved as motion. Thank you, Phil. Always good to have you with us. And
Very much.
just an editorial comment. I think to York's comment, this can serve as a little bit of a wake-up call to us, and there's maybe some more things we ought to be doing as a community in the homeless area. And so we do need to do that. And just as a personal matter, I chair a very large homeless ministry in the state. And if you look at the homeless, and you got to be careful and not put them all in one category, it breaks down to about a third have various mental and physical problems. Mm-hmm. There's probably about a third that are really ready to make a change, and we'd be in a position to help them. And there's probably a third where tough love is what's really called for a short period of time until they're ready to make a change. Also, I think you got to treat men and women very, very differently. It's a very, very difficult thing for a woman that's in a homeless situation, and you can imagine what they turn to in a matter of days. So, anyway, I do think this is an opportunity for us, not a problem, an opportunity. Okay, next item is let's see, we got two items coming out of the American Rescue Plan. I'm going to take those two together, and if I understand these correctly, these ones actually come in different silos and fall outside the $37 million that we have before us as a budgetary at council.
That is correct. Yes. So these are two. So the American Rescue Plan again was $1.9 trillion, of which $350 billion was allocated to local governments, of which our $37 million is from. So this is additional beyond that $37 million. These two both are for the travel and tourism and outdoor recreation grant fund. So basically, ways that you can spur tourism and specifically outdoor recreation, how those tie together. So we took a look at the different projects that we have ongoing and what projects would be best suited to apply. And out of that, we came with 2 projects. So like we mentioned earlier in the meeting, I think the best thing is accepting money. The next best thing is applying for new money. So these 2, the first one is we have an existing project that we're working on with Friends of the Spanish Moss Trail. They have an existing A&H tax for the design of the crossing of the Spanish Moss Trail at Rebo Road. So currently it stops just prior to Rebo Road. This application would be to extend it and make that crossing to Rebo Road or beyond Rebo Road. This is a total of $1 million project was scoped out, of which the grant would be for $800,000, has a 20% match. That 20% match, $200,000, would come from private match from Friends of the Spanish Moss Trail. So there would be no funds needed or required as matching funds local from Beaufort County. The second one is Beaufort High School realignment. So this is part of our current 2018 sales tax program. This is one of the projects that is called out on Ladies Island and is realigning that to provide safe access and spur economic development in that corridor along the way. This is for a $5.5 million project, of which the 20% matching funds would come from the existing 2018 sales tax. So these 2 grants would be to apply for both of these.
Any questions?
I had a question.
Yes, Alice.
The Beaufort High realignment, could you remind us where that runs, what it does, just briefly?
Sure. So currently where it's scoped out is at the back entrance of the high school. It would come out at Yeoman's Drive and cut across what is now the church property, the Catholic Church, and come to 802 Ladies Island Drive across from Hazel Farm. So
Got
that's
it.
currently what's under design or where we have it scoped at the moment.
So that would be in place of the sales tax money, or?
No, it would, so the sales tax
supplement it.
money, this would supplement, yes ma'am, supplement.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Other questions? Motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve both of those.
Okay,
Move
I'll second.
forward.
I see Mark's hand for a second, okay. Any objections to these 2 applications? If not, this stands approved. Both of them stand approved. That takes us to one more grant application, and I also might point out, I think as we go forward, we're going to be considering as a council whether there's a way that you can advise us more after the fact as opposed to having to approve to apply.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking through that and been talking internally how we could do that and be more efficient with that. So all these applications don't necessarily have to come forward. We can still bring forward for information only, but not for approval. And we're looking at retooling in our budget ordinance in this upcoming year. So there may be possibility of that.
Good.
Until then, we're going to bring all these until that happens. The next one is for a recommendation to apply for the Good Jobs Challenge Grant. So this one, similar to the solid waste and recycling one, we already have a program, and it was a square slam dunk. This one, we don't have the program, but it's a square slam dunk with one of our ARPA projects. So the goal of this project, this is through the EDA, Federal EDA, Economic Development Authority. Again, another ARPA distribution out of the 1.9, not part of the local government's section, but out of the 1.9. And this is targeted to bring together employees who have hiring needs and other key entities to train workers in in-demand skills that lead to good paying jobs. So we couldn't think of a more perfectly suited project application than our CNA nursing program that we intend to develop with TCL and Beaufort Memorial and the school district. So this would be for, we have $700,000 appropriated in our ARPA allocation that would be used for the matching grant, and this would allow us to apply for this grant.
Motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it.
Second, Mark. Any objection? Seeing none, this stands approved. You're welcome to go ahead and apply.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that takes us to, I think, a major piece of discussion for today, which is the possibility that we've been considering of whether we would do a referendum in 22. And one of the thoughts that the administration is put forward is really the need and the desirability of having a citizens committee as part of this whole process. So if you want to describe it briefly, then I'm going to give a little background where I think we are on the referendum. And
Yeah, that's fine. So back during the retreat and through other various committee meetings, the council has expressed some consensus that we should pursue a referendum for transportation sales tax in 2022 in November. And I am proposing to you all today that you do items 1 through 5 on the AIS there. The first item is to appoint a citizens committee that would consist of one appointee from each of the 11 council districts, and each municipality would get to appoint one person to that committee to give you a total of 17 members. That sounds like a large number, but it's really not whenever you're looking at a county our size with our population, with the amount of roads that we have. That Jared, our ACA for engineering, serve as the lead Beaufort County staff person to the committee, and that he be charged with developing a preliminary list of projects for the committee to review and for them to consider. And then that the Citizens Committee be charged with completing and preparing the following recommendations back to the council. 1, a project list for the referendum question. 2, the amount of the sales tax to be collected. And 3, the duration of the sales tax. I think there is consensus or talk of doing a larger amount over a longer period of time and putting that on the referendum question, but they would certainly be charged with that responsibility for considering that and recommending to you all what they as citizens would feel to be appropriate for the question. That the committee complete its work by April 29th, 2022. That the committee's recommendation be presented first to the Transportation Advisory Group, BTAG, then to the County Council for the adoption of the referendum question ordinance adoption process. So if all of that goes according to plan, then we would have that issue completed sometime late June, early July, if we stay on that schedule. So that's my recommendation, you all, for your consideration. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
well, thank you very much. Let me just build on that a little bit, and there's a little bit of background, and before we jump into discussion. You know, if you look at the 10-year plan that staff actually put together, it was about 1.2 billion. And we've had conversations along the way about whether we ought to do the traditional 4 years, specify distinct projects, and then get those done, or whether we look to something of a much longer term and perhaps expands into other areas to include perhaps air travel, marine travel, mass transit, pathways, whatever. But if you think about, and I started out, I was pretty much just assumed we'd do the 4 years, and really was convinced as we went along that the longer makes sense. And some of the other counties have done that. We're fortunate to have Kurt, who comes out of Charleston, where they have a lot of experience with that, and I tend to believe that's a logical thing to do. So if just for some round numbers, if we have about $1.2 billion that's in front of us as potential road projects, not counting a few other things that we might put some money toward, and we did something in the 10-year range, and if you look at the current collection rate, we'd probably be out something, average maybe 60 million a year, and so that would be on the order of half. And again, I think the committee and the other folks can zero in on what makes some sense. But I think it sends a good message to the public that, one, it is a big number that we're dealing with, and this is not the solution to all of it. But if we're not doing a referendum, there's really not a lot of other sources that we can go to for the really, really big dollars. And we do know that the visitors pay about a third, at the end of the day. coming in. So, now, there's other sources of funds that have to be considered, impact fees and those kind of things. But I like the concept of the Citizens Committee, and I think how this would actually roll out is that the staff would be putting forward an initial proposal, a draft, if you will, a straw man as to what it might be, because I think it'd be easier for the committee to start with that and then to work it than to start from ground zero, and time is kind of short. Obviously, there's inputs coming from LATS and LOCAG, which need to be folded into that, and I think there's some of the places where they may, particularly on the major arterials, will play an important role on saying these are the things that are needed or not needed, but we know some of that funding will fall to us. I think the BTAG committee, which we modified last year, and it basically has 3 representatives from council, geographically dispersed, has the representatives from the municipalities, I think the sheriff and the head of the county transportation committee. I think they can be very valuable doing this, having an input to this too, because they're going to be most sensitive to what are the political ramifications. And then I think county council, we have to play a very important role in this. This would be by far the biggest referendum that's been done in the history of the county by a factor of 2, I'm guessing. And so there's a lot of work to convince the public of what it is that we need to do. And I think we as council members need to engage, and if there's things that you see or that aren't making sense, we need to talk about them sooner rather than later, and not just get to the end point and people say, well, I don't like it, therefore I'm going to vote against it, because it becomes very difficult to pass these things if we're a split council. So I think all of this builds on the vision that Jared shared with us about where we need to be if we look out and we have visitors and people that are considering to build companies here. And, we don't know what their comments are, but when they drive around, if they like and see the roads and how we're solving problems, they tend to come here. And if not, we never knew that they said, well, check that off our list, we're not going there. So let me open it up for comments, but really the question for today is, do we move forward to council an ordinance to stand up a citizens committee for looking at the referendum? And the other piece I would mention, I would actually go a little further than Eric did. I would actually see it as something that would be continuing and not just a one-time deal, because part of what we're going to be faced with is, if it's multi-year, is you can't identify everything today that you need to do for a lot of years. And so therefore you need a mechanism so we don't get into, hey, give us the money, public, and trust us, we'll spend it well. But I think they would be very useful in terms of allocating and setting priorities.
Yeah, and I think Kurt and I were talking about this last week. I think that's what Charleston County did. They didn't actually appoint a citizens committee until after the referendum had been adopted. I think we're not in the same situation as them, so a citizens committee that could formulate the question and the projects to be added in the amount and the duration would be very beneficial, but then to carry that committee forward through beyond the referendum question, if it's successful, to continue work on moving those projects along, I think has a lot of benefits. I would agree with that.
Good. So, comments from council?
Mr. Chairman,
Joe, I see your hand up, and then...
Yes, I'm very much in favor of this. I'd like to start with item number 1. I think that's critical. I think we need a specific means and method of getting this committee together, which means we have to have an application process. We have to have a timeline and deadline, whether we set criteria for those who are applying. How do we evaluate the applicants? All of those are not done right now, but we need to do this as quickly as we possibly can. So that's my first comment.
Okay.
Going on to number 5 with the Transportation Advisory Committee. I did some research. I saw 2 resolutions. I don't know how many resolutions there are out there for this particular committee. I found the one in 1999 and the one in 2001. I don't know if there was one. I saw minutes from the meetings in 2009, 2010, and 2012. So I'm assuming at some point in time, we will have to again amend or reconstitute this group with a resolution. So,
Yeah, actually, I believe I could be, stand corrected. I believe we amended the original ordinance last year to reconfigure who the representatives were. So I think we have an ordinance in place, but staff can double check that.
well, see, an ordinance is different than a resolution.
Yeah, the ordinance is more permanent.
Yeah, well, so we've discussed this at the administration level, and we feel in this particular case, this is not a border commission. This is just a committee that you would appoint to undertake a specific, very defined project process for the referendum and the management thereafter if you want to do that. We feel you can do that by resolution. And as far as the application process, I don't feel that that's necessary in this particular case. I think we should just leave it up to individual council members to figure out who in their districts are best suited to deal with transportation-related issues and just make those recommendations for those names. Once we do this resolution at the next council meeting, council would give me their names. I would reach out to the municipalities and get names from them, one name per municipality, and then we would get the committee started working soon here at the 1st of February.
Okay.
So
that would certainly expedite the process if we're making the appointments.
Okay.
Is that okay with you, Joe, if we're each making our own appointments?
No, I'm just looking for the best possible way of doing this.
Yeah, those are all good questions, all good concerns, valid concerns. We've discussed this. Typically, these citizens committees that have been used in other jurisdictions for these types of issues have just been appointed by county council without a long, extensive process, and they've been stood up by resolution.
Okay. I would then ask our attorneys to draft the appropriate resolution that we would need to establish this transportation advisory group.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll prepare that and have that ready for you on your regular council agenda next week.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Other comments? By the way, my comment relative to the ordinance related to the so-called BTAG, the Transportation Advisory Group. The Citizens Group is a totally separate.
Yeah, we would have plenty of time to deal with the BTAG issue, whatever we got to do to do that.
Yeah.
Once this committee gets started working, we'll have a few months.
Good.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, other comments?
No, I would make the motion that we have administration set forth the recommendations as proposed in the AIS.
I'd like to second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Alice seconds. Comments? Objections? Seeing none, this stands approved as recommended. So we'll look forward to that continuing discussion at council. That brings us to the award of a program manager for transportation issues. Jared?
Thank you. So this is a transportation manager. Let me first remind everybody what we put out as our goal and where we wanted to go inside the transportation department. But first, even before I get to that, let me tell you kind of some back history of our staffing and where we are currently. So many, many years ago before I was here, but probably in the 10 to 15 year range, county staff actually had a full engineering staff. And by full, I mean we had surveyors, we had design engineers, a pretty robust staff. And this was before 2008 and the economic crash that we had then. Sometime passed thereafter, and I don't know the specifics. Again, I wasn't here. This is just me trying to do due diligence on the subject. that methodology changed, and we went and reduced some of that staff for various reasons.
BC 123. One tap mobile. Plus 16692545251614154177770.
I think the Russians are after us.
Someone needs to mute. Someone needs to mute.
All right. So anyhow, at some point there was a transitional shift for the reason I don't know what the reason may have been, but so some of that staff was let go, and there was a focused energy to use some consulting staff to help supplement that. Since then, to present day, we're still in that kind of same footprint, but almost to the opposite side of the spectrum, where our staff is a transportation staff, is a staff of one. We have some others that help, but as far as our actual transportation department is Miss Andrea Atherton. So she has done a marvelous job and is currently doing a marvelous job, but we have an open transportation construction manager, and that's it. So what the purpose is, we have set out last year, was that we would identify a couple of on-call contracts, key on-call contracts, similar in the way that SCDOT does. The first one we did last year was a traffic on-call. So as I mentioned before, traffic and transportation are separate items. Traffic is specific to signals and traffic patterns. So we don't have anybody on staff specific with that knowledge. We have now 3 on-call traffic consulting engineers that help us with that effort. Second, what we identified is we want a program manager. And this is for a couple of reasons. This is to help us right now where we are with our current workload, with all various sorts of programs, and then in the future, whatever that may become of that, whether it's sales tax or any growth that we may have. Beyond that, we intend after this to go after a on-call for design. So we'll have a list of major transportation design consultants onboarded, and CEI, so that's construction engineering and inspection. And then lastly, right-of-way agents. We have one right-of-way manager, and she does a marvelous job, Miss Patty Wilson, but she focuses primarily on stormwater easements as well as dirt road paving. So if we build a robust program, she's definitely going to need help. So that's what we have set up. This award here is for the transportation project manager. We put this out in November of last year and received 6 submissions. We had a committee of 5 of various folks and staff to take a look at this and interviewed the top 3 firms. Of the 3 that we interviewed, I don't think we could have gone wrong with any. So we had high quality firms that submitted, but the committee determined that J. Bragg Consulting LLC was the most qualified firm. So what we have since coordinated is a contract fee. This would be a time and materials contract. It would be for 5 years and renewed annually. So the first year would be 1 year from the beginning of February until January, end of January next year, for a total of $410,197.48. What this gives us is the opportunity, again, we have a staff of 1, and this helps us supplant our existing staff, and it's as needed. So if we need more help throughout the year, we can lean on her and her company, or if we need less help, we're able to grow our staff, then we can reduce. But that's how it's set up with time and materials. Would also give us the opportunity, if we have a long vision of a program, which we do, our goal is to grow back to some point, maybe not to the full point where we have full survey, but have some type of management or design on board, and this gives us the flexibility to do that. So without further ado, the staff recommendation is to award the contract for transportation program management to J. Bragg Consultant LLC. And I'm sorry, one last thing. Just J. Bragg Consultant, she is coordinated with DOT and categorized as a DBE, a disadvantaged business enterprise. She's a woman-owned enterprise, and works here with her headquarters in Bluffton, South Carolina. So that was not part of the ranking criteria, but it's always a plus to have somebody that we can help in our community, that's working and living in our community, and to help them grow our business and help them help us in return with our program. So just another note for you guys.
And she's done some good work for us in the past, and just to reemphasize, this would be, it's an hourly rate based on whatever is actually spent time, and something you have to approve as you go along.
That's correct.
So, good. A motion to approve this contract, and given the amount, it would have to go back on, it would have to go to council?
It does.
I will make that motion.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this award?
No, Mr. Chairman, no more than this company must have been an excellent company, because it was primarily rated high by all the evaluators except for one. So,
Yeah, and to that, so again, we had 6 companies and 3 that ranked highest. And even during the interview process, some ranks were adjusted, but her ranks only went up because of her interview.
Yeah. Good. So, any objections to this contract moving forward to council? Seeing none, we'll consider it approved at the committee level and look forward to revisiting it at council. We're down to reappointments. And let me take the vacancies first, just because there's 1 or 2 items that change. On the Transportation Committee, it showed 2 vacancies, but actually the one for Council District 9 has been filled. So we still have one open one for 7. We have the 3 for the Construction Adjustment Board. We have one for the Stormwater Management Board. And on the Keep Beaufort Beautiful Board, we had 2 vacancies, but Mark, I understand you have somebody that you want to recommend?
Yes, and that would be Mr. Bartholow. He lives in District 9. He was in District 7, so he's now coming to District. I'm sorry, he's in District 9. However, working with Mr. Cunningham, he's going to be representing District 7.
Okay, so what that leaves us for then with items 21, 22, and that particular one is basically the reappointment of the Beaufort County Board, of which there's several members all listed there. Then there's a reappointment of Steve Andrews and Alan Snyder to the Stormwater Utility Board. So we have a bunch of appointments. I need a motion, and we'll just take all those together unless there's an objection.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, York, approved?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further nominations for any of these positions? Any objections to any of these folks? If not, this will stand approved. They'll stand approved, basically reappointments and one new appointment at this point in time. That pretty much concludes the meeting. Just a wrap-up item. We have 5 weeks until our next scheduled meeting, and we've talked about potentially having a meeting 2 weeks from today. Joe and I still need to zero in on that, make sure it's not getting in the way of something else, but we have a fair number of items, and so in some form, it's going to make sense for us to meet before the 5 weeks. So we got things like the airport, we got the facilities issues, some good things happening on 1770 that Jared can brief us in on. So that's just a heads up. Anything else for the good of the cause?
One question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
There was an email that went to everybody on the Southern Beaufort County Beautification Board making a request for funding for beautification. Where is that? Is that moving around somewhere?
That I don't know. Eric's going to tell us.
That'll come before you all as a part of the new budget request if we do anything with it. It's not anything for you to worry about. That's their idea of whenever the ordinance put that committee in place, that commission or board in place, they were supposed to go out and work to find funding from businesses and groups in Southern Beaufort County to do landscaping along Highway 278, and they've submitted this request 2 years in a row. I did not fund it last year. I'm probably not going to recommend it this year because we need you all to evaluate the amount of money it costs us to maintain these landscaped areas along 278. While
while they're very attractive and beautiful, a couple of issues come into play, and I know this is a longer answer than any of y'all wanted, but we have to pay to maintain those areas, which can be several $100,000 a year. In addition to that, the plants typically get removed through vehicles running off of 278 and plowing through them. So you have holes of vegetation, and you have trees leaning over or what have you. So I'm not sure that we're accomplishing what we originally intended there. So, but we'll deal with that as a part of the budget. Nothing for you all to concern yourself with right now.
So, as we adjourn, I'd let the minutes notice that we did finish in a shorter time than finance.
I hate to say that.
We stand adjourned. Good meeting, all.